The air in the cantina was thick with smoke and the stench of a dozen different alien species. Neon lights flickered overhead, casting strange shadows across the metal walls of Outpost Delta 7. In the darkest corner, away from the main crowd, sat a figure that most patrons avoided looking at directly. Vexthera was a nightmare made flesh. Once a proud Krillian warrior standing 8 feet tall, he now hunched over a small table, his massive frame broken by war. 3 of his 6 limbs had been replaced with crude mechanical prosthetics that sparked and clicked with every movement. His chitinous armor, once a deep purple that marked him as elite guard, was now scarred and cracked, held together with metal patches and synthetic welds. His compound eyes, the size of a human fist, had once been able to see across 17 different spectrums of light. Now they were clouded with cataracts and trauma, the left one completely replaced with a cybernetic implant that glowed red in the dim light. When he moved, servo motors, wind, and hydraulic fluid leaked from poorly sealed joints. The cantina's usual noise, the chatter of traders, the clink of glasses, the hum of universal translators continued around him. Most aliens gave him a wide berth. Everyone knew what those particular scars meant. Everyone knew about the human front. At the bar, a young coalition recruit was holding court with a group of impressed civilians. Fresh out of the academy, his blue uniform still pressed and clean. He gestured wildly as he spoke about humanity's recent admission to the Galactic Council. "I'm telling you it's a joke," the recruit said, his voice carrying across the cantina. "Humans, they're barely evolved. Apes, no natural weapons, no armor plating, no enhanced strength. They can't even see in the dark properly. The council only accepted them because they felt sorry for them." A few aliens chuckled. The recruit, emboldened by his audience, continued. "I mean, look at us. We Zentari have natural plasma generation. The Krillians have those massive claws and armor. The Vorthok can phase through solid matter. What do humans have? They're soft, weak, and they die if you look at them wrong. Heard they actually need to sleep for 1/3 of their lives. Can you imagine?" More laughter. The recruit basked in the attention. The war reports were probably exaggerated anyway. I bet the whole thing was just propaganda to make the coalition look good. "Oh, we fought the mighty humans and barely won. Please, give me a full squad and I could probably take their entire homeworld." That's when the laughter stopped. Every alien in the cantina had gone silent. They were all looking at the corner where Vexthera sat. The old warrior's mechanical hand had crushed his drink glass, purple liquid dripping between his metal fingers. Primitive? The voice that emerged from Vexthera's throat was barely recognizable, as once belonging to a living being. It sounded like metal scraping against stone, like air being forced through a broken pipe. "Kid, you don't know what you're talking about." The recruit turned around, seeing the scarred veteran for the first time. His confidence wavered for just a moment before his academy training kicked in. He straightened his shoulders and walked over to the table. "Listen, old-timer, I don't know what kind of war stories you've been telling, but humans are just another backward species. No natural armor, no claws, no enhanced strength. What could they possibly do to someone like you?" Vexthera's cybernetic eye focused on the young soldier with mechanical precision. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "Sit down." The words hit the cantina like a physical force. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. The bartender's forearms froze in place. Even the atmospheric processors seemed to quiet down. The recruit found himself dropping into the chair across from Vexthera without conscious thought. "Let me tell you about the human front," Vexthera continued, his mechanical fingers drumming against the table. Each tap sounded like a gunshot in the silence, where I lost half my squad, most of my body, and all of my faith in the universe making sense. He gestured with his mechanical arm, the servos whining as ancient joints protested. "It started 3 cycles ago. I Command called it Operation Clean Sweep. The name should have been our first warning. Nothing involving humans is ever clean." The recruit leaned forward despite himself. Around them, other patrons had begun to gather, drawn by the promise of a story they'd never heard told by someone who'd actually lived it. The briefing was simple, Vexera continued. Sol system. 1 star, 8 planets, only 1 inhabited. Population 12 billion. Military assessment, primitive projectile weapons, basic chemical rockets, no energy shields, expected resistance, minimal. Expected casualties, none. He paused to take another drink, this one from a reinforced glass designed for species with enhanced strength. We expected to face a few thousand warriors with basic projectile weapons. Instead, we found something far worse. His compound eyes seemed to look through the recruit, seeing something in the distance that only he could perceive. We found humans who had spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of killing each other. And when we arrived, they simply turned that expertise on us. The recruit's voice was barely a whisper. What happened? Vexera, a cybernetic eye clicked as it refocused. What happened was, we learned why evolution gave humans forward-facing eyes, boy. They're not prey animals hiding in the grass, hoping predators won't notice them. They're apex predators, and those eyes are designed for one thing: tracking targets. He leaned forward, his massive frame casting a shadow over the young soldier. You want to know what humans are capable of? Look at me. Really look at me. Was considered one of the finest warriors in the Coalition fleet. I had armor that could stop plasma bolts, claws that could cut through starship hulls, and reflexes fast enough to dodge laser fire. The mechanical arm gestured to his scarred body. This is what a human did to me, not with energy weapons or advanced technology. With improvised explosives made from household chemicals and a piece of sharpened metal, the cantina was dead silent now. Even the background hum of the life support systems seemed muted. You see, recruit, humans have something that no other species in the galaxy possesses, something that makes them more dangerous than any natural weapon or armor plating. What's that? Vexera. His ruined face managed something that might have been a smile. Imagination. And the absolute refusal to accept that anything is impossible. The recruit's hands trembled as he reached for his drink. Vexera noticed and let out a sound that might have been laughter, though it sounded more like grinding metal. The first engagement was at their orbital station around Jupiter, Vexera continued, his voice growing darker with each word. Kepler Station, a simple mining facility hanging in space like a metal spider. Our intelligence said it was lightly defended, maybe a few security guards with basic weapons. Command figured we'd take it in an hour, maybe less. He traced a deep scar along his carapace with one mechanical finger, the metal scraping against. Chitin, we were so wrong it wasn't even funny. Humans had 2 commanders there, a male named Deho and a female called Hyjin. On paper, they looked harmless. Intelligence files said they were just engineers, mining specialists. What our analysts failed to understand was that human engineers don't just build things that kill. The veteran's compound eyes became distant, seeing something far beyond the cantina walls. I remember the briefing like it was yesterday. 3 assault pods, full combat loadouts. We'd done this dance 1,000 times before. Drop in fast, overwhelm the defenders, secure the facility. Standard coalition procedure. Around them, the cantina had grown even quieter. Other patrons leaned in, drawn by the story like moths to a flame. The bartender had stopped cleaning glasses, his forearms frozen in place. Our pods launched at 0800 hours. Ship time. Beautiful approach. Textbook formation. Jupiter hung there, like a giant orange eye. Watching us work, the station didn't even try to run. Most species would have activated their emergency beacons by then, maybe tried to negotiate. But the humans? They just sat there, waiting. Vexera's mechanical hand clicked as he gestured. Quad 1 hit the main docking bay. 20 soldiers, full battle armor, plasma rifles charged and ready. They cut through the airlock like it was. Paper Pod 2 took the command center. Pod 3, my pod, went for the reactor levels. We figured we'd have the whole place secured in minutes. He paused, downing another gulp of his drink. Purple liquid leaked from a crack in his throat plating. The first sign something was wrong came from Pod 1. Squad. Leader Kethfer was reporting light resistance when his transmission cut out. Not jammed, cut out. Like someone had taken a pair of scissors to his communication array. shifted uncomfortably. Equipment failure, that's what we thought, until we started hearing the screaming. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Several aliens at nearby tables had stopped pretending they weren't listening. See, Daeho wasn't just a mining engineer. He was a mining engineer who'd spent 15 years figuring out how to extract resources from the most dangerous asteroids in the system, and Hijin. She designed life support systems for deep space installations. Together, they knew that station better than their own bodies. Vexera's cybernetic eye whirred as it focused on the recruit. They'd turned their own home into a weapon.
Ow.
Every corridor became a kill zone. The mining lasers, designed to cut through solid rock, had been rerouted to slice through our armor like it was wet tissue. My squad mates were literally cut in half before they could even scream. The veteran's voice dropped to a whisper. But that was just the beginning. Daeho had rigged the life support systems. Instead of pumping breathable atmosphere, they started flooding sections with toxic gas. Not just any gas, mining gas. It's the kind that dissolves your lungs from the inside out. He gestured to his scarred throat. I got a lungful of that stuff, and 3 months in medical learning to breathe again. But my squad mates in Section C? They weren't so lucky. Found them melted to the floor, their armor fused to their bodies. The recruit's face had gone pale. Around them, other patrons were looking sick. And Hijin. Vexera shuddered, his mechanical limbs clicking in distress. She was the real monster. Life support engineer, right? She knew exactly how every system on that station worked, including the gravity generators. His compound eyes fixed on something invisible in the distance. Gravity is supposed to be constant, reliable. 1G, maybe a little more or less depending on the world. But Hijin turned it into a weapon. She'd wait until our troops gathered in a corridor, then spike the gravity to 20 Gs. Just 4 seconds. Just long enough. The mechanical hand clenched into a fist. I watched 12 of my soldiers get crushed against the walls like insects. Their armor cracked like eggshells. The sound? He trailed off, lost in the memory. But the worst part wasn't the traps, he continued, his voice barely audible. It was how they fought. When we finally cornered Daeho in the main engineering section, he didn't beg for mercy. He didn't try to negotiate. He looked at us through his helmet visor, smiled, and said something in their language. What did he say? Our translators rendered it as "see you in hell." Then he detonated his own position. The cantina was silent, except for the hum of life support systems. The explosion took out an entire section of the station. 12 of my soldiers died instantly. The rest of us were thrown around like toys. When the smoke cleared, there was nothing left of Daeho except a crater in the metal floor. Vexera's cybernetic eye clicked as it refocused. But even that wasn't the end. We thought we'd won. We'd taken casualties, sure, but we'd secured the station. That's when we found Hijin. His voice took on a tone of genuine fear. She was in the reactor control room, hands zip-tied behind her back, blood running from a head wound. Soldiers had managed to capture her alive. Thought we'd finally caught a break. The veteran's mechanical fingers drummed against the table. She was laughing. Not crying, not begging, not even angry. Laughing, like she'd just heard the funniest joke in the universe. What was so funny? She told us about the surprise she'd left in the reactor core. See, mining stations don't just extract resources.
Ow.
They process them. And some of those resources are highly unstable, radioactive, explosive. The recruit's eyes widened in horror. Jin had been working on the reactor systems for months before we arrived, if not maintaining them, modifying them. She'd turned the entire station into a bomb. A really, really big bomb. Vexera's compound eyes seemed to dim. She looked at our commanding officer, still laughing, and said, "You have 30 seconds to reach minimum safe distance. Good luck." Then she bit down on something hidden in her mouth. Poison tooth, dead in seconds. The cantina was dead silent now. The station, gone, along with half our assault fleet. The explosion was so bright it lit up Jupiter's atmosphere for days. We lost 2 destroyers, 4 cruisers, and everyone who was still on the station. The blast waved through our flagship clear across the system. He leaned back in his chair, the metal creaking under his weight. They'd rigged it to explode from the moment we arrived. The whole battle, every trap, every death, it was all just to see how many of us they could take down with them. The veteran's voice was barely a whisper. That's when we realized we weren't fighting a war. We were fighting a species that had turned suicide into an art form. The cantina had grown completely silent now, every patron drawn in by the veteran's tale like pieces of metal to a magnet. Even the atmospheric recyclers seemed to hum more quietly, as if the station itself was listening. Vexthera's mechanical fingers traced the rim of his glass, leaving small scratches in the metal. After Kepler High Command realized we were dealing with something unprecedented, he continued, his voice barely above a whisper, the destruction of an entire mining station, the loss of half our assault fleet. It sent shockwaves through the coalition. They called it a fluke, a lucky shot, but I knew better. His cybernetic eye whirred as it focused on the recruit. They sent me down to Earth itself, to the surface. Command figured if we could take their homeworld, the rest of their colonies would fall in line. Standard doctrine, cut off the head, the body dies. The veteran's compound eyes seemed to look right through the young soldier. That's where I met the real monsters. It's not in some military bunker or fortified position. In the streets of their cities, fighting creatures that shouldn't have been able to hurt a fly. He gestured to his missing limbs, the mechanical replacements clicking softly. I lost these fighting a human pack in what they called Seoul, a city of 10 million people, most of them supposedly non-combatants. The intelligence reports said it would be easy. Civilian population, minimal military presence, outdated defensive systems. The recruit leaned forward, his academy training warring with growing dread. What went wrong? Everything. Xthera-S. Voice carried the weight of absolute defeat. The pack was led by a warrior named Taehain and his mate Yoon. On paper, they looked harmless. Intelligence files said they were civilians, teacher and a doctor. I remember laughing when I read their profiles, his mechanical hand clenched into a fist. A math teacher and a pediatrician. What kind of threat could they possibly pose to a full coalition strike team? Around them, other patrons had begun to gather in a loose circle, drawn by the story like predators to wounded prey. The bartender had given up all pretense of working, his forearms hanging motionless at his sides. Civilians did this to you? The recruit whispered, staring at the veteran's scarred form. You don't understand, Vexera replied, his voice taking on the tone of someone explaining a fundamental law of physics. There are no human civilians. Every single one of them is a potential warrior. They just haven't been activated yet. Paused, taking another drink. The purple liquid seemed to give him strength, or at least the courage to continue. Taehain had been teaching mathematics to children for 15 years. Algebra, geometry, calculus. Boring stuff, right? But when we invaded, he became a guerrilla fighter who could calculate our patrol routes with mathematical precision. He knew exactly where we'd be, when we'd be there, and how many of us would be in each group. The veteran's cybernetic eye clicked as it refocused. It set up ambushes that were like solved equations. If 10 number of soldiers take route A at time B, then explosive C, placed at location D, will eliminate exactly 73.2% of the enemy force. He was never wrong. And the doctor, Yuna, the name came out like a curse. She'd spent 20 years healing people, saving lives, making children smile. But she knew the human body better than anyone. Every nerve, every pressure point, every way to cause maximum pain without causing death. Vexthera's voice cracked like breaking glass. She didn't just wound us. She studied us. Captured soldiers would come back, changed, broken. Not just physically, but mentally. She'd figured out exactly how our nervous systems worked, how our pain receptors fired, how to keep us conscious while she worked. The recruit's face had gone pale. Several aliens at nearby tables looked like they were about to be sick. They had a pack of 12 others, all civilians. A construction worker named Gin Wu, who turned entire city blocks into fortresses. He'd spend days rigging buildings with traps, creating kill zones that looked like normal streets. Chef called Myung, who created explosive devices from kitchen chemicals. Stuff you could buy at any grocery store. The veteran's mechanical limbs whirred as he shifted in his chair. But the worst part wasn't their individual skills. It was how they fought together, like a single organism. They'd anticipate each other's moves, cover each other's weaknesses, adapt to our tactics in real time. Surely superior firepower could overcome. Firepower means nothing when your enemy doesn't fear death, Vexera interrupted. When Jinwoo was mortally wounded, plasma burns covering half his body, he didn't retreat. He didn't call for medical aid, grabbed 2 of my soldiers, held them tight, and waited. The cantina was so quiet you could hear the station's hull creaking in the stellar wind. Myung detonated her position 3 seconds later. The explosion took out an entire intersection. Jinwoo made sure my soldiers couldn't escape the blast radius. He died with a smile on his face. The recruit's hands were shaking now. How do you fight something like that? You don't. The answer came out flat. Final. You survive it. Maybe. Etc. Compound eyes seemed to dim. When we finally killed Taehyun, cornered him in a school building, Yuna didn't mourn. She didn't cry or rage or break down. She just became twice as dangerous, like losing her mate had freed her from the last restraints of civilization. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. She started hunting us, not fighting. Hunting. She'd pick off stragglers, leave their bodies where we'd find them. Always with precise surgical wounds. It's always still alive, but not for long. The veteran's mechanical fingers drummed against the table. That's when I learned the most terrifying thing about humans. They don't just fight harder when their packmates die. They fight smarter. They adapt. They learn from every mistake, every casualty, every small victory we achieved against them. He gestured to his cybernetic eye. Yuna did this to me. Carved it out with a scalpel while I was paralyzed with some toxin she'd cooked up. But she didn't just take my eye. She studied it first, figured out how our visual systems worked. She started using that knowledge against the rest of my squad. She'd create visual illusions, play with light and shadow, make us see things that weren't there, or miss things that were right in front of us. By the time we realized what was happening, half my unit was dead. The recruit stared at him in horror. How did you survive? I didn't, Vexthera replied. Not really. The thing that crawled away from Seoul, that's not the same creature that went in. That warrior died in those streets, along with his pride and his faith in the natural order. He raised his glass in a mock toast. To the humans of Earth, who taught the galaxy that the most dangerous predator isn't the one with the biggest claws or the strongest armor. It's the one that can think. The silence stretched on, broken only by the distant hum of the station's systems and the quiet sobbing of a young Zentari trader who'd been listening from the bar. They're here now, Vexthera said finally. Humans, on this very station, trading, laughing, making friends. Every single one of them is a potential Taehyun or Yuna. They just haven't been activated yet. Cybernetic eye fixed on the recruit with mechanical precision. Pray they never are. The temperature in the cantina seemed to drop several degrees as Vexera's voice took on a hollow, haunted quality. His mechanical fingers traced invisible patterns on the table's surface, leaving small scratches in the metal. The war turned. When humans activated something they called the Scorched Earth Protocol, said, his compound eyes reflecting the dim neon lights like broken mirrors. Up until that point, we thought we were winning. We were winning. We'd taken 3 of their colony worlds, established supply lines, begun the occupation. Our generals were already planning victory parades. He paused, staring into his drink as if searching for answers in the purple liquid. New Kyoto, New Busan, New Seoul, 3 thriving human colonies, each with populations in the tens of millions. Rich worlds, strategic locations, perfect stepping stones to Earth itself. The recruit shifted uncomfortably. So what went wrong? Everything. The word came out like a death sentence. The human military, led by a cold-blooded commander named Sung-ho, made a decision that haunts me still. They looked at their own conquered worlds, their own captured people. and decided that if they couldn't win, they'd make sure we couldn't either. Around them, the cantina's patrons leaned in closer. Even species that had never heard of humans before seemed transfixed by the story. The air recyclers hummed quietly, the only sound in the otherwise silent space. I was aboard the dreadnought Kethmoran when the first transmission came through. Vexthera continued, his voice growing more distant. Standard diplomatic frequency. A human voice, calm and professional, speaking perfect coalition standard. The translator rendered it as attention coalition forces. You have 30 minutes to evacuate all personnel from New Kyoto. This is your only warning. His cybernetic eye clicked as it refocused on the recruit. Our admiral laughed. Act. He opened a channel and replied that humans were in no position to make demands, that they should surrender immediately or face the consequences. The veteran's mechanical hand clenched into a fist. The human voice came back, still calm, still professional. You understand your position. Our response will be proportional. Then the transmission cut out. What happened next? Nothing. For exactly 30 minutes, nothing happened. Our occupation forces on New Kyoto reported business as usual. The human population was subdued, cooperative. Our administrators were setting up the new government structure. Everything was proceeding according to plan. Vexthera's voice dropped to barely a whisper. Then the planet lit up like a star. Silence in the cantina was absolute now. Even the background systems seemed to hold their breath. I watched from orbit as a human female named Yunji, their colonial administrator, personally detonated the fusion reactors. Not one reactor. All of them. Every single fusion plant on the planet, synchronized to blow at exactly the same moment. His compound eyes seemed to look through the recruit, seeing something far beyond the cantina walls. The explosion was visible from 3 systems away. 60 million humans died in that blast, along with our entire occupation force. 20,000 coalition soldiers, gone in an instant. The recruit's face had gone pale. They killed their own people, without hesitation, Vexthera replied, his voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. Men, women, children, elderly, didn't matter. They were all humans first, individuals second. And humans, we learned, would rather die than be conquered. He took another drink, the purple liquid seeming to give him strength to continue. The admiral went into complete shock, couldn't comprehend what he'd just witnessed. Would commit genocide against itself, rather than accept defeat. But surely that was an isolated incident. That's what we thought too. The veteran's mechanical limbs whirred as he shifted in his chair, until New Busan went dark 6 hours later. The recruit's eyes widened. They did it again. Worse. Much worse. Vexthera's voice cracked like breaking glass. On New Busan, a human engineer named Jae-sung spent 3 days rigging the entire planet's atmosphere processors to explode. 3 days. He could have evacuated, could have fled to the outer colonies. Instead, he stayed to make sure the detonation would be big enough to take out our fleet in orbit. The veteran's cybernetic eye flickered as memories played across its surface. Our intelligence division intercepted his personal logs. He was recording messages to his family, explaining what he was doing and why. His voice never wavered, never showed fear or doubt. He talked about his work like he was describing a construction project. What did he say? That the chain reaction would destabilize the atmospheric processors across 7 continents. That the resulting explosion would create a debris field, extending 15,000 kilometers from the planet's surface. That any ship caught in that field would be torn apart by micrometeorites traveling at relativistic speeds. Vexthera's mechanical fingers drummed against the table, but he was right. The explosion took out 2 of our battle cruisers and damaged 3 others. But the worst part was his final transmission. Just before the detonation, he opened a channel to our fleet and said, "Tell your friends on Earth that this is just the beginning." The cantina was so quiet you could hear individual aliens breathing. The recruit's hands were shaking as he reached for his drink, but the worst was New Seoul, the veteran continued, his voice now barely audible. A human warrior named Sa Young held the detonator for the planet's core charges. Not fusion reactors this time. It somehow managed to destabilize the planetary core itself. How is that even possible? Human engineering. They'd been mining the planet's core for decades, extracting rare metals for their industrial base. But they'd also been placing shaped charges at key stress points. Hundreds of them, all linked to a single detonation system. Vexera's compound. Eyes seemed too dim. Soyoung was their negotiator during the surrender talks. She sat across from Admiral Kethfer, looked him in the eye, and told him that if he didn't withdraw from the system, she'd turn the entire world into a nova. Surely. A bluff? Our admiral thought so too. He'd studied human psychology, understood their attachment to life, their fear of death. He figured no rational being would destroy their own homeworld. The veteran's voice took on a bitter edge. He was wrong. What happened? Soyoung calmly counted down from 10. At 5, the admiral ordered her to stop. At 3, he began giving withdrawal orders to the fleet. At 1, he was screaming for his ships to jump to hyperspace. Vexthera's mechanical hand trembled as he reached for his drink. She triggered. The charge is at 0. The silence stretched on, broken only by the quiet sobbing of a young Zentari trader who'd been listening from the bar. The planet cracked like an egg. The blast was so massive it destroyed everything within 3 light minutes. We lost 4 dreadnoughts and 30,000 troops. Ow. The shockwave threw our command ship clear across the system. His voice dropped to a whisper, and as the planet died, our sensors picked up human transmissions. Emergency frequencies, civilian channels, even children's comm networks. They were all broadcasting the same thing. What? They were singing? Singing their battle? Songs as they burned? 60 million people facing certain death, and they were singing. The recruit stared at him in horror. What kind of songs? Our translators couldn't handle most of it. Too many cultural references, too much emotional context. But the basic message was clear. They were singing about defiance, about choosing death over slavery, about making their enemies pay for every victory. Vexera, a cybernetic eye fixed on the young soldier.
Yes.
That's when High Command finally understood what we were fighting. It's not just another species, not just another war. We were fighting a civilization that had weaponized suicide, raised his glass in a mock toast to the humans of the colonies, who taught the galaxy that sometimes the only way to win is to make sure everyone loses. The cantina remained silent for a long moment, the weight of the story settling over the patrons, like a funeral shroud. Finally, the recruit found his voice.
Out. Do you fight something like that?
You don't, Vexthera replied. You negotiate, compromise. You find a way to coexist. The alternative is watching entire star systems burn. His mechanical fingers traced the scars on his carapace. That's why humans sit on the Galactic Council now. Not because we defeated them. It's because we were too terrified to keep fighting. The cantina's atmosphere had grown thick with tension and fear. Vexera's story had drawn every patron into its web, creating a circle of silent witnesses to horrors beyond imagination. The veteran's mechanical limbs clicked softly as he prepared to deliver his final revelation. The war ended not with human surrender, but with our own, Vexera concluded, his voice heavy with defeat and something else, a bone-deep exhaustion that spoke of battles fought not just with weapons, but with the very nature of reality itself. High Command realized we were fighting a species that would rather die than submit. A species that had turned their own extinction into a weapon. He reached into his damaged armor with his mechanical hand, producing a small recording device. Its surface was scarred by plasma burns and pitted with micrometeorite impacts. A survivor of the war, just like its owner. This is from the final human transmission, he said, holding the device like it contained a live grenade. Broadcast by their war leader, a human named Huainwu. 3 cycles ago, when our fleets were burning and our colonies were in ruins, this message went out across every frequency in the galaxy. The device crackled to life, and a cold, measured voice filled the cantina. The sound was crystal clear despite the device's damage, as if the words themselves had burned through any interference. To the Galactic Coalition, you have seen what we do when we fight for survival. You have witnessed what we call holding back. If you continue this war, you will learn what humans are truly capable of when we stop restraining ourselves. Choose wisely. The transmission ended, leaving the cantina in absolute silence. The recruit stared at the device in horror, his academy training crumbling in the face of implications too terrible to process. Holding back, he whispered. What terrifies me most, Vexthera admitted, his compound eyes reflecting the device's dim status lights. Everything I've told you, the tactical brilliance, the suicidal courage, the scorched earth tactics, that was humans being merciful. They were testing us, learning our capabilities, seeing how far they could push us before we broke. He set the device down with infinite care, as if it might explode at any moment. The human named Hyanwu wasn't just a military commander. He was a strategist, student of warfare who had been watching every battle, analyzing every tactic, cataloging every weakness in our forces. And he wanted us to know that everything we'd experienced was just the opening act. The veteran's mechanical legs whirred as he stood slowly, his massive frame casting long shadows across the cantina floor. The armistice negotiations took place on a neutral station. Diplomatic protocol, civilized discussion, representatives from both sides. But when the human delegation arrived, everyone knew the war was over. What did they do? Nothing. That was the terrifying part. They didn't need to do anything. Their lead negotiator, a human ambassador named Jihun, walked into that conference room wearing a necklace made from the bones of our fallen officers. Not as a threat, but as a reminder. Vixthera's cybernetic eye clicked as it focused on the memory. I was there as a military advisor, what was left of me. When I asked Jihun about the necklace, he looked at me with those forward-facing predator eyes and said, "So we remember the price of underestimating each other." The cantina's patrons had formed a loose circle around the veterans' table. Drawn by the story like moths to flame, species that had never heard of humans before now looked genuinely terrified. But the negotiations themselves, the recruit pressed. Surely our diplomats signed everything the humans put in. Front of them, Vexthera interrupted, full withdrawal from human space. Reparations for the destroyed colonies, recognition of human sovereignty over their entire territorial claim, and most importantly, a seat on the Galactic Council. His mechanical hand clenched into a fist. Seat with full voting rights. Humans went from unknown primitives to major galactic power in the span of a single treaty signing. How did they manage that? Fear, the veteran replied simply. Pure, rational fear. Every delegate at that station had heard the reports, the suicide attacks, the planet crackers, the scorched earth protocol. They'd seen what humans were willing to do to enemies. Nobody wanted to find out what they'd do to friends who betrayed them. Vexthera began limping toward the cantina's exit, his mechanical legs clicking against the metal floor. The treaty was signed within 6 hours, record time for a galactic peace accord. And as soon as the ink dried, humans started acting like the war had never happened. He paused at the threshold, turning back to face the silent crowd. They integrated into coalition society like they'd been part of it for centuries. Human traders, human engineers, human diplomats. They even started intermarrying with some of our species. Zentari seemed particularly fond of them. But surely the threat remains. That's the thing, Vexthera said, his voice carrying across the now silent cantina. Humans now sit on the Galactic Council. They serve alongside us, trade with us, laugh at our jokes, and invite us to their cultural festivals. What lies beneath their civilized exterior? I've seen what they become when threatened. His compound eyes swept across the crowd, taking in every face, every expression of fear and fascination. Every human ship in the galaxy carries weapons that were never used in the war. Every human colony has contingency plans that make the Scorched Earth Protocol look like a gentle suggestion. And every human citizen is a potential warrior, just waiting for the right moment to activate. The veteran's cybernetic eye fixed on the recruit one final time. So I'll leave you with this advice, young soldier. Humans are our allies now. They're our trading partners, our neighbors, our friends. But they're also the most dangerous species in the galaxy. They've just chosen not to be dangerous to us. He gestured to his scarred, broken body. This is what happened when they were being merciful. When they were holding back, they were testing us to see what we could do. The cantina's light seemed to dim as his words sank in. Pray you never give them reason to stop holding back. As Vexthera limped away, his mechanical legs clicking against the floor, the cantina remained silent. The young recruit sat alone, staring at his untouched drink. Finally understanding why the galaxy's greatest warriors spoke of humans in whispers. Outside the cantina's windows, the stars wheeled in their eternal dance. Ships moved between them, carrying cargo and passengers across the vast distances of space. Many of those ships were human-built, crewed by humans, following routes established by human navigators. In the darkness of space, humanity's patrol vessels continued their rounds, their crews going about their duties with quiet efficiency. But in the depths of those vessels, in secured compartments marked with warnings in a dozen languages, weapons waited that had never been used in the war. Weapons that represented humanity's true potential. The galaxy had learned to fear what humans would do to survive. It had yet to learn what they would do to win, and in the depths of space, on ships and stations across 1,000 worlds, humans went about their daily lives with the same quiet efficiency that had once terrified the greatest military force in galactic history. They smiled, they laughed, they made friends with alien species who had once been their enemies. But in the back of every human mind, as in the deepest recesses of their collective memory, the lessons of the war remained. Were capable of the understanding that peace was a choice, not a weakness. The galaxy had chosen to make them equals. It was, perhaps, the wisest decision in galactic history. The end.